Most people think of pennies as worthless clutter, coins that pile up in jars, disappear between couch cushions, or get ignored at the bottom of drawers. But hidden among these overlooked copper discs is one of the most astonishing stories in American money history. A story where a single 1-cent coin has sold for more than a luxury mansion, a private island, or a lifetime of wages. The Lincoln wheat cent, first introduced in 1909, is not just another old coin. It is a symbol of how small details, historical timing, and minting mistakes can transform the simplest form of money into a multi-million-dollar treasure. For decades, millions of Americans have unknowingly spent, stored, or discarded wheat pennies without realizing that some of them rank among the most valuable coins ever produced by the United States Mint. These coins are not valuable because they are old alone, and they are not valuable simply because they feature Abraham Lincoln. They are valuable because of rare production years, unique mint marks, wartime metal changes, and extraordinary errors that escaped detection and survived against overwhelming odds. When the Lincoln wheat cent debuted in 1909, it marked a turning point in U.S. coinage. For the first time, a real historical figure appeared on an everyday circulating coin, replacing the traditional allegorical designs that had dominated American money for over a century. The coin was created to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and its designer, Victor David Brenner, placed 2 wheat stalks on the reverse to symbolize prosperity and unity. What no one could have predicted was that this humble design would one day produce some of the most famous and valuable errors in numismatic history. The early years of wheat cent production would prove chaotic, experimental, and imperfect, especially as the United States Mint struggled to meet demand, manage multiple facilities, and adjust to changing technology. These conditions created the perfect environment for rare coins to be born. As production ramped up across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints, subtle differences began to appear. Mint marks were punched by hand, dies wore down quickly, and quality control was far less precise than modern standards. Coins were struck rapidly, sometimes carelessly, and small variations slipped through unnoticed. In most cases, these differences meant nothing, but in a few extraordinary instances, they created coins so rare that collectors would later pay unimaginable sums to own them. The Lincoln wheat cent series spans from 1909 to 1958, and within those years exist legendary issues that have rewritten record books and stunned the collecting world. Perhaps the most famous example is the 1909 SVDB wheat cent, a coin whose value comes not from an error, but from controversy. When the coin was first released, Brenner's initials, VDB, appeared prominently on the reverse, and public backlash was swift. Critics complained that the designer had taken too much credit, and the mint removed the initials almost immediately. As a result, only a small number of 1909 coins from the San Francisco Mint were produced with the VDB initials before the change, instantly creating one of the first great modern U.S. rarities. Today, even heavily worn examples command thousands of dollars, while pristine specimens can sell for 6 figures. This coin alone proves that a penny's value has nothing to do with its face value and everything to do with its story. As the years progressed, new rarities emerged, often unintentionally. The 1914 D wheat cent is another legendary example, produced in relatively low numbers and heavily circulated during a time when pennies were used constantly. Many were worn down, damaged, or lost, making high-quality survivors extremely rare. Collectors prize this coin not because it looks unusual, but because so few exist in collectible condition. This scarcity has pushed prices into the tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars for top-grade examples. It is a powerful reminder that rarity is often created not at the moment of minting, but through decades of everyday use and loss. The Great Depression, World War I, and World War II all left their marks on the wheat cent series, influencing production levels, materials, and minting practices. During times of national crisis, the mint prioritized speed over perfection, increasing the likelihood of errors and anomalies. Coins were struck with worn dies, misaligned designs, and inconsistent metal compositions. And while most of these imperfections went unnoticed at the time, collectors today view them as clues to hidden value. The economic hardships of the era also meant that few people saved coins in pristine condition, further reducing the number of high-grade survivors and increasing their desirability decades later. What makes wheat pennies especially fascinating is that some of the most valuable examples were not recognized as rare for years, or even decades. Coins that would later sell for millions once passed through countless hands for a single cent, spent on candy, newspapers, or everyday necessities. This delayed recognition is what fuels the modern wheat cent treasure hunt, because it means valuable coins could still exist outside of museums and elite collections. Unlike ancient gold coins or colonial relics, wheat pennies were produced in massive quantities and used by ordinary people, creating the real possibility that a historic rarity could still be hiding in plain sight. As we continue this journey, the focus will shift from well-known key dates to astonishing mint errors, wartime metal experiments, and the specific wheat pennies that have shattered price records and changed lives. These are not theoretical values or exaggerated claims, but documented sales that prove how a single penny can be worth more than a house, more than gold, and in rare cases, more than most people earn in a lifetime. The deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that ignoring old pennies may be one of the most expensive mistakes a person can make. As the Lincoln wheat cent continued to circulate through the early decades of the 20th century, the conditions that created extreme rarity began to intensify, and nowhere is this more evident than in the coins produced during times of war, economic uncertainty, and rapid industrial change. By the late 1930s and early 1940s, the United States was preparing for global conflict, and the demand for metal became a national priority. Copper, the primary component of pennies, was needed for ammunition, wiring, and military equipment, forcing the U.S. Mint to experiment with alternative materials. This led to one of the most famous and misunderstood coins in American history, the 1943 Lincoln cent, struck not in copper, but in zinc-coated steel. While hundreds of millions of steel cents were produced and most are common today, a tiny number of copper pennies were mistakenly struck in 1943 when leftover bronze planchets from the previous year were accidentally fed into the presses. These accidental strikes created what would become the most valuable Lincoln wheat cents ever known. The 1943 bronze penny is not valuable because it was planned, but because it was never supposed to exist. Fewer than 24 authentic examples are believed to survive, and each verified coin has sold for astronomical prices, with some auction results exceeding $1 million. These pennies are so valuable that they have become the subject of fakes, myths, and legends. Yet their existence is well documented, and their value continues to rise as collectors compete for ownership of one of the greatest minting accidents in U.S. history. The wartime chaos that produced the 1943 bronze cent also led to the opposite error the following year, when the mint returned to copper-based planchets in 1944. A small number of steel blanks from 1943 remained in the system and were mistakenly used to strike 1944 Lincoln cents. These 1944 steel pennies are nearly as rare as their 1943 bronze counterparts and are equally prized by collectors. Their value comes from the same principle. They represent a moment when the mint's transition between materials was imperfect, leaving behind physical evidence of that transition. When authenticated, these coins have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and like the 1943 bronze cent, they are closely guarded, meticulously studied, and fiercely contested whenever one appears on the market. Beyond the famous wartime metal errors, the wheat cent series is filled with subtle yet powerful varieties that dramatically affect value. Double die obverse coins, where the design appears doubled due to misaligned dies during the hubbing process, are among the most sought-after examples. The 1955 double die wheat cent is perhaps the most iconic, with its bold, unmistakable doubling on the date and lettering. Unlike many errors that require magnification, this coin's doubling is visible to the naked eye, making it instantly recognizable and highly desirable. Thousands were released into circulation before the error was discovered, and for years these pennies were spent unknowingly, passed from hand to hand as ordinary change. Today, even well-worn examples command thousands of dollars, while uncirculated specimens can sell for six figures. The appeal of the 1955 double die lies not only in its rarity, but in its dramatic appearance, which tells the story of a momentary failure in the minting process frozen in time. Another variety that quietly commands immense respect among collectors is the 1922 no-D wheat cent, a coin struck at the Denver Mint that somehow left the presses without its mint mark. This anomaly occurred due to worn dies and heavy polishing, which removed the D mint mark entirely. While technically not a true missing mint mark error, the result is the same: a coin that appears to have been struck in Philadelphia, even though no cents were officially produced there that year. The scarcity of genuine 1922 no-D cents, combined with the difficulty of authentication, has made them one of the most studied coins in the series. High-grade examples are extraordinarily rare and can command prices rivaling some gold coins, reinforcing the idea that copper pennies can hold immense value when history and circumstance align. What ties these legendary wheat pennies together is the role of human oversight and mechanical limitation. Early minting technology relied heavily on manual processes, from die preparation to mint mark punching, and each step introduced the possibility of variation. In an era before computerized precision, mistakes were inevitable, and while most were corrected quickly, a few slipped through and entered circulation. Over time, these mistakes became milestones in numismatic history, celebrated not as failures, but as fascinating anomalies that reveal how money was made during a formative period in American history. Equally important is the role of survival. Many of the most valuable wheat cents are not rare solely because few were produced, but because few survived in collectible condition. Pennies were heavily used, easily damaged, and rarely saved, especially during times when every cent mattered. Economic hardship encouraged spending, not saving, and as a result, high-grade examples of early wheat pennies are exceptionally scarce. This combination of limited production, widespread circulation, and decades of attrition has elevated certain dates and varieties into the realm of elite collectibles, proving that even the smallest denomination can carry enormous historical and monetary weight. As collectors continue to study and rediscover these coins, the realization grows that the story of the wheat cent is far from complete. New discoveries still occur, authentication techniques continue to improve, and long-forgotten collections occasionally surface, revealing coins thought to be lost forever. This ongoing evolution keeps the wheat cent series alive and dynamic, ensuring that it remains one of the most exciting and accessible entry points into the world of rare coin collecting, where a single overlooked penny can still change a life. As this journey comes to an end, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The smallest coins are often the ones with the biggest secrets. For more than a century, Lincoln wheat cents passed quietly through American hands, buying bread, newspapers, and candy, never announcing that some of them would one day be worth more than gold, more than homes, and more than entire lifetimes of work. These pennies were ignored, underestimated, and overlooked, and that is exactly why their stories are so powerful. They remind us that history doesn't always live in museums or vaults. Sometimes it sits unnoticed in jars, drawers, and forgotten boxes, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. Every old penny carries a story of its time, and a rare few carry something more, a mistake, a moment, or a coincidence that turned ordinary copper into extraordinary wealth. Whether you ever find $1 million coin or not, the real lesson is this: never dismiss something just because it seems small or common. Because in the world of rare coins, the difference between 1 cent and a fortune can be as thin as a single detail. So before you ignore that old penny again, remember, history has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in plain sight.